a democracy in our country is alive, well, and it's certainly something that I support wholeheartedly.
Hold on, guys. I have breaking news while we're talking to Matt Gaetz. New York Times has just called your race. Matt Gaetz has won in his district in Florida right now as we speak to him. And I did notice, though, Representative Gaetz, that you evaded the question. You said that Biden is president. You didn't say Biden won the election. He obviously did, and you know it. But I'll move on. Anna.
No, hold on. I got a follow-up question to something you said. You just made a vague statement about some irregularities. There are some irregularities, and you were one of the individuals who pushed the lie that the election was stolen from Trump. So be specific. What are the so-called irregularities? Because the Trump camp failed to provide a shred of evidence indicating that there was widespread voter fraud. Yet you and other Trump allies continued repeating that the election was stolen from him. So be specific. What exactly are you referring to?
There was a ruling from the Michigan court, the federal court, that talked about the election integrity issue. This is one of three. So we're seeing that courts are starting to recognize the same thing we had been talking about from November 3rd.
4 months after President Trump said, I think there were some irregularities in this election, some of the courts are beginning to agree. And Michigan is the latest one. The chief judge of the Court of Claims, it's a statewide court, has agreed that the Secretary of State Benson did not follow Michigan law when she gave guidance on how to interpret signatures on ballots. And
Trump camp failed to provide a shred of evidence indicating that there was widespread voter fraud.
What she told clerks is, err on the side of counting anything unless you really think the signature is way off. Legislature never gave her that authority. She would have to promulgate a rule under Michigan law, put it through a process and commenting process and get it vetted before she could order such a thing. That didn't happen. So the Court of Claims said that instruction was unlawful, and therefore the way signatures were counted may have been inappropriate. That's a big ruling.
I'm really concerned about some of these urban areas that operate under an entirely different system than the rest of their states. For example, in Wayne County, Michigan, the mechanism by which ballots are assembled is totally different than in the other parts of the state. And I don't think that volume alone justifies that. I also think that in Pennsylvania, a major irregularity was the change in the way that ballots were mailed out. In time after time, you saw secretaries of state take unilateral action to go and engage in this broad distribution of ballots. I think that is ripe for fraud, and I don't think that it was constitutional. Now, Cenk made an important point about the 60.
The courts weighed in on that, though, right?
Yeah, I want to get to that because almost all of those cases, not all, but almost all of those cases were resolved in the absence of an evidentiary hearing. So it's not exactly fair to say that we lost because we didn't have sufficient evidence. No, a lot of them were decided on jurisdictional grounds and on the sufficiency of the pleadings, not based on an actual evidentiary hearing where both sides got to put information before the court. So it's a little, I think, misleading to suggest that 16 hearings around the country where evidence was presented.
Matt. Some were decided on jurisdictional grounds, but the majority were decided on the merits. And every judge, including every Republican judge, including every Trump-appointed judge, said, you have not presented any evidence, including the evidence that you were just talking about now. When in court, there was none, zero. And by the way, Matt, you can tell from your answers, you don't believe it either. It's super obvious you don't believe it.
But yeah, I can tell by your questions, you guys still have no message, because instead of talking about how we're going to actually move the country forward, you guys are still obsessed about the 2020 election.
Matt, I'm not a regular Democrat. I don't care about their messaging. What I care about is if your friend Donald Trump wins in 2024, we might never have another election because he's an obvious pathological liar, doesn't believe in democracy, didn't want to leave even though he lost the election, and you know it.
Cenk, the last time you were on the ballot, you got 4% of the vote. The last time you were on the ballot, you got 4% of the vote. So for you,
so what? What does that have to do with anything that we're talking about right now?
Okay, Matt, if we're going in that direction, listen, you had sex with a 17-year-old, according to allegations, and you asked for a pardon. Hold on. You asked for a pardon. You asked for a pardon. Why did you ask for the pardon?
I'm Cenk Anna. I'm a father, a son, an immigrant, an outsider, because outsiders are America.
Matt Gaetz has won in his district in Florida.
That was something.
It was. So I'm not gonna lie.
Oops.
And you asked for a pardon. Hold on. You asked for a pardon. You asked for a pardon. Why did you ask for the pardon?
And a spokesman told The Times Gaetz did not privately request a pardon in connection with the continuing Justice Department inquiry. Yet in the final weeks of the Trump presidency, the Florida congressman did make this curious suggestion.
The president should pardon himself, his family, his administration officials, and any of his supporters who've been targeted. Look, this Department of Justice and FBI targeted President Trump and wanted to accuse him of crimes when he was the incoming president. What do you think that they're going to do if they think he's the outgoing president?
Yeah, why did you ask Trump for a pardon if you didn't break any laws?
Sleeping with a
I've been
17-year-old.
overwhelmingly reelected. You guys are in some sort of weird struggle session there, and I'm just glad, even though the internet hated you having me on, Cenk, you're getting to see what a congressional victory party looks like, and that's something that might be a novel experience.
Why did you ask for a pardon for having sex with a 17-year-old?
Something that even happened. You're like reading into an anonymous internet conspiracy. And
the sex trafficking probe involving Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz of Florida appears to be wrapping up. The Washington Post reports that the career prosecutors recommend no charges over what was investigated, whether he had involvement with an ex-girlfriend who was 17 at the time and other individuals, including some who have been charged.
it's really sad because in my district, the voters saw through that. In my state, we're overwhelming.
Did you ask for the pardon?
That has all been debunked. I've addressed it. President Trump has addressed it. And by the way, you should look at your own comments about women that caused Bernie Sanders to unendorse you. Imagine being so aligned with Bernie Sanders that he would endorse you, but he has to pull his endorsement because the things that you said were
today, Bernie Sanders endorsed me. So look, let me tell you something. It's an incredible honor. Okay, this guy's a legend. To have the courage to back me, just a simple congressional candidate, it's humbling.
Bernie Sanders is now retracting his endorsement of California congressional candidate Cenk Anna.
Oh, you almost had it. You got to be quicker than that.
Yeah. Well, Matt, see, some people grow up and they change. Others send their colleagues in Congress nude photos of women that they've slept with today, and are hated by members of their own party, which there are numerous reports about that regarding you.
You know, keep obsessing about
But I
guys.
appreciate you coming on to answer our questions.
And people who told those lies
Did
are
your
going to the
father, by any chance, get
They were
involved?
not lies,
in,
Matt, and you know it.
investigation
Dude, it's no wonder you guys don't have the trust of the voters because you guys sit here and just spew this nonsense that isn't relevant to people's lives. We're going to focus on inflation. We're going to focus on the border. We're going to focus on investigations. And the result is we're going to win in 2024. Democracy will be fine, and you guys will still be crying on the young turf.
Did you never answered the question, did you sleep with a 17-year-old?
Absolutely not. That has been totally debunked. And by the way, more women have made accusations against Joe Biden than have made accusations against me.
We've talked about them.
You should be really proud of that.
Well,
Okay.
my number is 0. You can't even keep Bernie Sanders' endorsement, and Joe Biden doesn't exactly have a clean record himself. So we're pretty happy here in the Sunshine State. One Miami-Dade County, one my district. Looks like the House and Senate will flip, and eager to get to Washington to get to work.
Yeah. By the way, there was one difference between us. The Democratic Party did not support me because I am against their corruption. Whereas you kissed the ass of the Republican leaders 24/7, so they were very happy to support you.
You couldn't even hold Bernie. He endorsed you and had to unendorse you. Like, do you think Bernie is all of a sudden the establishment of the Democratic Party? He's not even a Democrat, and he left you on the side of the road with your 4% of the vote.
Matt, I don't care about my personal career at all. I told Bernie to do that. I actually wanted Bernie to win that election really badly, and I didn't want to get in his way because I care about policies. I care about higher wages. I care about everybody in the country getting health insurance. I care about them getting paid family leave. I care about them getting child tax credit. And what I heard from you tonight is when you guys win, you're not going to do anything about wages. You're going to make sure that people do not get any help in the categories that I just mentioned.
No, wages will go in
The real evil is Medicaid, to be fair. The real evil in the country is Medicaid.
And
Gotta
the
do
American
something
people
about
are going to get something in the Republican majority.
All right, Matt Gaetz, Thank you for joining us. We appreciate
Thanks
it.
for having me. Appreciate it. This was fun.
Look, guys, the Matt Gaetz interview. So yes, there were some people on Twitter, etc., who thought, oh, they're going to be like mainstream media and they're just going to be soft to him.
Yeah,
right?
thank you for giving us the benefit of the doubt, even though we've been on air. Cenk for over 20 years, me for over 15 years. There's never been any indication that we will, coalesce around rabid Republicans, but thank you for giving us the benefit of the doubt. I really appreciate it. Feels real good to know that years and years of what we've been doing here at TYT doesn't seem to matter at all.
But am I saying that I'm better than you? I guess I'm going a little further than you are. Yeah, I'm fucking better than you, okay? Much better than you. You are garbage.
No, that years and years of what we've been doing here at TYT doesn't seem to matter at all.
Hey, so me, I don't care at all.
I know you don't, but I do.
You like.
I do. I don't care.
I don't care at all.
I know you don't, but I do.
You like.
I do.
Okay.
I do care. I don't care.
Not in the school of camp. I know there's a giant camp on the left who says, don't talk to the right. Oh my God, it's so scary. Don't platform them. What if they come up with ideas and they say things? Well, then you beat their ideas down.
But I just want to note, 2 rounds of stimulus under Donald Trump, where he also insisted that those checks have his signature on it. You guys remember that, right?
Yeah. Mr. President, there are news reports that you want to sign the stimulus checks that are going out here in several months. Is that right? Do you want to sign those checks?
Me sign? No. There's millions of checks. I'm going to sign them? No. It's a Trump administration initiative, but do I want to sign them? No. The people are getting their money. There's a lot of stimulus going in a lot of different ways. There's also stimulus going for companies that would, if it weren't for our government.
Under Donald Trump, where he also insisted that those checks have his signature on it. You guys remember that, right?
Stimulus checks for $1,200 are being mailed out to many Americans. Some already got them through direct deposit, but they're being mailed to help Americans through this crisis. For the first time ever, President Trump's name is going to appear on an IRS check. It's being put in the memo line because the president isn't authorized to sign the checks. Did the president personally suggest this idea?
Where he also insisted that those checks have his signature on it.
Well, let me just correct you and say the checks have not gone out yet, and the reason why the checks have not gone out is we're hoping that more people, as I said, will go to irs.gov. It's much safer to send out direct deposits. As it relates to the president's name on it, the president could have been authorized to sign the checks. That would have slowed things down. We didn't want to do that. We did put the president's name on the check. That was my idea. He is the president, and I think it's a terrific symbol to the American public.
Where he also insisted that those checks have his signature on it.
We did put the president's name on the check. That was my idea.
You guys remember that, right? Around the beginning of the pandemic. Interesting that lapdog to Trump, Matt Gaetz, had no problem with those checks at the time. And by the way, we all know what those checks were, okay? The idea that inflation has been caused by a little tiny bit of economic relief in the beginning of the pandemic when businesses were shut down and people were laid off through no fault of their own is insane. He knows it's insane, which is why toward the end of this interview, he decided, all right, now it's time to find a cop out, find a way to get out of these incredibly difficult questions. Let me go ahead and attack Cenk on his congressional run from several years ago.
You don't believe it.
But yeah, I can tell by your questions, you guys still have no message, because instead of talking about how we're going to actually move the country forward, you guys are still obsessed about the 2020 election.
I'm not a regular Democrat. I don't care about their messaging. What I care about is if your friend Donald Trump wins in 2024, we might never have another election because he's an obvious pathological liar, doesn't believe in democracy, didn't want to leave even though he lost the election, and you know it.
Cenk, the last time you were on the ballot, you got 4% of the vote.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's super relevant to what's happening in Congress now. Okay, so last thing on this, guys. So he pretends that it's popular to take away things like unemployment insurance. Well, good news, we actually have exit polling from the election. And this is among the group of people who said inflation was their #1 concern. So most likely to vote for Republicans, concerned about Biden, et cetera. So they proposed different alternatives for, do you think this would help in fighting inflation? And one of them was cutting food stamps and unemployment insurance. That's what Matt Gaetz basically just suggested, right? And fighting inflation. And one of them was cutting food stamps and unemployment insurance. That's what Matt Gaetz basically just suggested, right?
But government spending is inflationary. That is the central covenant of this election, where people want to see less government spending. Now, I don't think we ought to cut government spending.
And fighting inflation. And one of them was cutting food stamps and unemployment insurance. That's what Matt Gaetz basically just suggested, right?
We want to see less government spending. Now, I don't think we ought to cut government spending for disabled people like my mother, for seniors. I don't want to touch Social Security or Medicare, but specifically with the Obamacare Medicaid expansion, you have able-bodied people who could go to work, but who choose not to, and I don't think we should provide those things for them.
So we ask him the questions, he tells you what he's going to do, and now you can see the American people hate those ideas.
Yep.
I wish Democrats would have actually asked those questions, and mainstream media would have asked those questions of Republicans during the election, so that people could have found out what the Republican Party actually stands for.